The church stood at the edge of the valley, where the dirt road thinned into grass and memory. Its boards were gray with age, its steeple leaning just enough to look tired. Folks said it had been built before the war, raised by hands that knew more about prayer than plans. When the wind passed through the cracks in its walls, it carried sounds that felt older than the town itself. On a late Sunday afternoon in 1884, Clara Whitmore pushed open the heavy wooden door for the first time in 20 years. The hinges groaned low and long, the way an old man might when rising from his chair. Dust lifted into the sunlight and drifted like smoke. Clara paused at the threshold, her gloved hand resting on the door. Her breath caught somewhere between past and present. She had left this town as a young woman with a valise and a promise. Now she had returned with silver in her hair and a quiet ache she could not name. The pews were just as she remembered, long, narrow, smoothed by decades of folded hands and restless children. The floor creaked beneath her boots, each step answering her with a soft complaint. She moved slowly down the center aisle, as if afraid the place might vanish if she hurried. That was when she heard it. A faint echo, not a voice exactly, but the shape of one. It rose and fell like a hymn remembered by heart, but forgotten by tongue. Clara closed her eyes. She saw the church filled again. Oil lamps glowing warm against winter dark. Mothers whispering for their children to sit still. Men removing their hats, their faces worn but hopeful. And at the front, beneath the simple wooden cross, stood her father. Reverend Thomas Whitmore had preached here for 32 years. His sermons were plain and steady, like the man himself. He spoke of forgiveness as if it were a road anyone could walk, and of faith as something you carried quietly, the way you carried grief. Clara had been 16 the last time she heard his voice in this place. That day the church had been full past the doors. Word had spread that the old reverend was unwell. Folks came not only to listen, but to say goodbye, though no one said that word out loud. He had preached sitting down, his hands resting on the pulpit as if it were holding him upright. His voice had trembled, but it never broke. Some things don't leave us, he had said. They stay in the walls, in the ground, in the hearts of those who listen. Clara opened her eyes. The church was empty again, but the echo lingered, gentle and stubborn. She walked to the front pew and sat where she once had as a child, her feet not touching the floor. She remembered tracing the wood grain with her finger, pretending it was a river that led somewhere far away. She had wanted more than this town, more than quiet Sundays and borrowed hymns, and she had gone. The wind slipped through a broken window and stirred the air. The old hymn book on the pulpit shifted, its pages fluttering softly. Clara stood and crossed the room, lifting the book with careful hands. Inside the cover her father's name was written in ink, faded but steady. She swallowed hard. Outside, the bell rope hung loose, frayed near the end. Without thinking, Clara wrapped her hands around it and pulled. The bell rang once. The sound rolled out across the valley, slow and full. It echoed off hills and fields, calling no one in particular, and everyone at once. Clara felt it in her chest, deep and true. She rang it again. In town, an old farmer paused mid-step. A woman hanging laundry looked up, her hand pressed to her mouth. Children stopped their game, uncertain why their hearts had suddenly grown still. The bell rang a third time, then fell silent. Clara let go of the rope. The echoes faded, but something remained. Not sound, but warmth. As if the church had answered her back, she left the hymn book on the pulpit and walked toward the door. Before stepping outside, she turned once more, taking in the worn pews, the leaning steeple, the quiet light. Some places do not ask to be remembered. They remember for us. As Clara closed the door behind her, the church stood steady in the afternoon sun, holding its echoes close. And for the first time in many years, the valley felt full again.